Hi everyone, and welcome to the pilot episode of Culture of Paint. So over the next hour or so, we're going to be taking a look at our top 10 paint jobs from 2020. Now, Culture of Paint's aimed at a mature audience, and whilst it's unlikely, it might contain explicit language and themes. So let's talk about paint.
And we're back.
Right, we're back. So, hi guys, good evening. Welcome to those of you that are watching from the Patreon chat. It's very nice to have you here. Piers, Bob, a few of you other guys in there. I hope you enjoy what's going to be our first show in what will hopefully become a regular YouTube show. We're going to shoot for sort of every 2 weeks or so. And the aim is we're going to talk all around everything to do with the miniatures painting community. So we're going to talk about models that we've seen, we're going to talk about products, we're going to talk about events that we're looking forward to going to or that we've been to, and we're going to be interviewing a ton of people right across the industry, from sculptors to artists to concept artists and everything you can imagine. The format of the show is normally we're going to kick it off with talking about some things that might have caught our eye over the last sort of preceding 2 weeks. But seeing as this is the first show, I thought I'd use the opportunity to introduce you to the four people you can see staring at you right now. So I'm Henry. I'm part of Cult of Paint. And I think for me at the moment, the major fun stuff with painting is fantasy models. So I'm really excited about working on some Age of Sigmar projects this year, personal gaming projects, and having a go at painting some larger scale miniatures like our Dareguard stuff that came out recently. So that's me. My partner in Cult of Paint and many other things is Andy Wardle.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Andy. Nice to see you all here. What am I looking forward to painting this year? I'm looking forward to painting something I haven't seen yet, because I'm excited by new stuff, and there's got to be something cool we haven't seen yet. And I've got to do something Lumineth this year. As a massive High Elf fan, I need to do something Lumineth, and that's one thing I've got to do this year for sure. But what else I'm looking forward to, I haven't seen it yet. But I like the shiny new things.
The new things, yeah. Nice one. And Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Matt. I'm kind of making the technical stuff happen at the moment. What am I looking forward to this year? Well, I'm just looking forward to mostly getting back to some competitions. That has been the killer. And just getting back into doing some proper comp painting, seeing everyone again and not being stuck in a room.
Yeah, big time. I think it's fair to say that we all came via GW, but I think particularly yourself and Andy, Matt, you're very keen on the competition painting, right?
Fun. If you haven't done it, you should definitely do it.
Matt's also the brains behind the Golden Demon Compendium, so go and check that out on Instagram if you haven't. But I'm sure we'll be talking about that at another time. And then last but not least is the Cult Commission's head, which is Rich.
Hi guys, nice to see everybody. I'm Rich, and things that I'm looking forward to, I mean, Space Marines. I always have and always will love a Space Marine, especially when it's a candy red colour. So that's something that's going to be continuing for me. And I think really just playing some games. So the goal kind of is to have, even if it's a small one, a playable army for every format. So AOS, 40k, bit of Kill Team, bit of Necromunda, and just, I want this year to be the year of rolling dice for me. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
So lots of army painting.
Yep.
Nice.
Loads of it.
Exciting. So that's just a brief introduction to all of us. Hopefully you'll get to know us as the shows go on. And we're always going to discuss our personal projects. But one thing that we really wanted to focus on with the show is to make it not about us chatting about what we've been doing, but more about what is going on in the community. So what are some projects that have caught our eyes, be they army painting projects, be they some new sculpting that's coming out, a Kickstarter we might have seen, hopefully amazing competition pieces once things start kicking off again. And as I mentioned in the intro, although we didn't really get many shows last year, unfortunately, there was still obviously the top painters and the new guys coming through were working on pieces for those shows, and some of them thankfully have still posted pictures of those. So we've had the opportunity at least to see beautiful studio lit pictures. I would just caveat that actually real quick is a massive thing that struck me was the first time going to a painting competition was the difference when you see them in your hand as opposed to when you see them on screen. So I think that's just worth sort of bearing in mind as well. But Andy's going to take the lead on this segment, guys. So without further ado, let's crack on with the top 10 paint jobs of 2020.
Thanks, Henry. So yeah, basically I had this idea to do top 10, try and do something positive about 2020, think about the awesome paint jobs. And we thought actually it'd be an amazing topic for our first podcast, and it'd be nicer to discuss it with you guys than me just chat on my own. So there's a couple rules going into this. The most important one was that I didn't want to repeat any artists. Otherwise, I might have only 2 or 3, to be honest. And yeah, so I picked what I thought was the best or the most important thing a particular artist did, and no repeats. So it's 10 figures and 10 artists. And I also did my best to make sure it was shown in 2020. When we thought about what were the best pieces, a lot of 2019 miniatures came up. And there was one I really wanted to talk about, but it was painted in 2020, but they didn't show it until the 1st of January. So I wasn't allowed to have that in. But without further ado, Matt, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the first one and we can chat about cool stuff.
There you go.
Perfect. So Dave Colwell's Wise Woman, it should be, hopefully, if the technology is working well. So I think Dave's one of those guys that I made the rule that we couldn't show the same artist twice, because we might end up with a lot of Dave stuff. And it's one of those painters that he doesn't really post whips or a lot. And, you might not see him post for a month or 2 months, and then you just get hit with something that always has an impact. There's always something cool about it, or a different interpretation, and you can normally tell that it's Dave's. I picked the Wise Woman out of all his pieces. It'd be easy to pick a Cult of Paint piece, which obviously I like the best. But I thought this one was a cool one because the Wise Woman was probably one of the most painted figures of 2020. And I think this is definitely in my top 2 versions of this figure. And I personally found it really inspiring because it ticked a lot of boxes for me in terms of interesting lighting, a nice definition on the face, cool colors. Yeah, just ticked a lot of boxes on what I think is cool. A lot of subtlety as well, which I kind of love in Dave's painting. And Lucas Pina always does amazing sculpts, so it's kind of an amazing combination, really. Henry, have you got any thoughts on this figure?
I mean, I agree with you on the Dave thing. I mean, he's pretty hot right now when it comes to miniatures painting. Yeah, I think he's certainly the sort of he's the guy that's coming through that's making the most waves, or certainly that I'm aware of. I think it's really nice as well, as you said, to have someone who's certainly at the top of their game at the moment in Dave painting something with someone like Lucas, who just produces it's ridiculous when you think of all the models that we're getting, and every single one of Lucas Pina's models that comes out is immediately like the best model that you're seeing that day, or that week or that month or whatever like that. But I think something, I don't know what it is. You and me often chat about the vibe or the atmosphere or whatever you want to call it. But I always think that's something Dave does really nicely on models. Is you can, I find it very easy to see the scene. Yeah, they're easy to look at. They're easy to picture what's not there. You know, what's going on in the background, what the setting is and stuff. And I think Lucas's sculpts probably do something quite similar. And this one in particular was just, yeah, it was outrageous. I mean, he does old ladies like no one else, and they're mega. So yeah, I just, yeah, it's pretty faultless, which is always nice.
Matt, have you got any thoughts on this figure?
I mean, it's amazing. Like my painting's nowhere near this, and sometimes I look at these things and I'm just like, how do you get the inspiration to, or even just think of doing that? That's kind of what blows my mind sometimes with some of these paint jobs, is I would never think to do that. Like it's an amazing way of thinking sometimes, and yeah, Dave's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's in it. It's what separates, like, you can get someone who can be technically very, very good, and they'll follow the rules and practice and achieve it. But to get those truly memorable paint jobs, I think it's true in most things in life, isn't it? It's that top little couple of % who genuinely have that sort of spark, which they couple with the discipline. I just feel like Dave's
really grounds his stuff in sort of reality as well. Like
shows a lot of restraint, and that's what I admire the most. I think holding back is what makes his model so clear and easy to look at. Is there anything you want to add to that, Rich? Anything you like about this one?
I think it's also just the overall quality, not just of the piece itself, but how it's like shown. So like his photography skills are always on point. The miniatures that he shows always look brilliant. I kind of like the fact that he doesn't do that many whips. You know, you see it, like the first time you see it, the quality of like the photography and everything, and the background and the lighting is just bang on, which obviously adds a lot. Like going back to what you were saying, Henry, about when you see things in real life as opposed to seeing the pictures of things, and it does have a massive impact. You know, all the other things that you guys said are completely correct. I love the texture. I love the palette. It's actually not, you know, it's quite a simple palette. He's not gone over the top. I think it's a great piece.
I think it's worth saying as well, isn't it, with the pictures, because Dave's based in Australia, so it's probably unlikely we'd have seen Dave at all the big shows in Europe anyway, had they gone ahead this year. So I think the fact he's able to take such good quality pictures of his pieces it's really key, isn't it? Because otherwise you wouldn't know about him, right?
It just gives you such a great impact the first time you see it, and then when you look at it and you look further deeper into it, there's just so much else going on, so many textures, so many like little parts to it that you don't necessarily see initially. It's awesome.
Well, I think we're going to have Dave as a guest at some point. We agreed it during the Day of God interviews to talk specifically about busts. So if you like this one and you like Dave's painting, then that's definitely going to be an episode at some point. So yeah, I'd like to move on to the next one because we've got 9 more to go through. Now this is a really interesting one, kind of going straight off of what you guys were just talking about with photography. So Maxime probably did one of the best pieces of 2019, so we can't talk about that, with his Troll, which got a Slayer sword and it got a Best of Show at SMC, so 2 enormous awards for one model. So Maxime, you know, always produces amazing stuff. Now, this really stood out to me for a bunch of reasons. One of them was it's a candid photo on the desk, and it looks incredible. So if it looks incredible with just a candid shot straight off the desk, I can't imagine what it looks like in the hand or with the studio photography. But the reason I chose this one is because there's a real balance. You know those guys that do the super crazy realistic busts? Yeah. They're almost not like...
They look like latex, don't they?
They're just a different thing, really. I feel they're different from what we do in the world of Games Workshop and fantasy competitions. It seems like almost a different type of painting, and it's almost too realistic in some ways. And I feel that this has got those supernatural tones and loads of realistic elements, and the eyes are super, super detailed, but it still feels arty because you can see the brush strokes in a nice way. All the colours are amazing. So I was really stunned by this piece, and definitely an inspirational one for painting busts and things like that. You got any thoughts on this, Matt?
Oh yeah, I mean it's phenomenal. Something Maxime does really well is skin. Like you can just see it there. It's just there's very few people that can do skin super well. Like it always comes a bit weird sometimes, but it just looks like it's actually on the miniature. Like the scar on his face, it looks like there's depth to it. You can almost say, yeah, that's probably hurt a bit when he got that. It's amazing.
Rich, have you got any thoughts on this one?
I love the fact that you said it's just a candid snap on his desk, and it's made the top 10 miniatures that we think of the entire year. I think it's brilliant. I love the fact it looks a little bit like me as well. If I shave my beard and a couple of scars,
it's got a much bigger chin than you, mate.
That's true, yeah, and a much smaller nose as well. I think actually thinking about it.
There's been a few good versions of this model actually from Beyond, which is Arnau's company, sculpted by Raoul, who always does good faces. You got anything you think about this one, Henry?
These sorts of things creep me out a bit, if I'm honest. Objectively, I think it's really cool, but I do find those like super realistic busts and skin paint, I find it a bit creepy, if I'm honest.
That's why I find this one different, right? Yeah. This one's like, it's realistic to be impressive, but not too realistic to be freaky. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's toeing the line.
It's nice. It's tricky, man. I think skin is, as we're finding out more and more as we're doing Patreon and YouTube and things like that, people seem to really be responding well to the different skin tutorials. And actually, I think there's an awful lot there to explore, isn't there, at all scales, really. But as soon as you get larger scale, like a bust, the gloves are off, aren't they? So yeah, it's super cool.
Perfect. Well, I think we can go to the next one, please, Matt. Mr. Gray. Now, this is one that probably maybe more people have seen. So maybe some people haven't seen the first two, but this one is one I'm sure lots of people have seen. Shown by Warhammer Community, the Void Dragon. And I chose this for two specific reasons. The first one is Rich didn't finish many figures, so I knew I wanted to feature Rich because I knew he would have done something that hit the top 10. But he just didn't really finish many figures. He's got lots and lots of whips this year.
Well, what about that amazing Abaddon?
Well, it's not finished.
It's not done. There's that great Orc model.
Not finished.
It's not finished, is it?
No.
But anyway, I did pick this for one particular reason, and that's it has something that some people call S0E0, which stands for Sky Earth Non-Metallic Metal, and basically that's where you have the sky represented from the top surfaces, and then we also have some bounce light from the ground. So we have the sky and the earth represented in the metallic surface. And the reason I think this piece is important is because that was quite an old school kind of technique. And we've seen it maybe 2 decades ago, early 2000s, people did this S0E0, and it can look really cheesy without causing offense. You can just have these stark black lines, bright blue, bright orange, and it's like an 80s Chrome logo for White Dwarf font or something like that. And why I think this one is cool is Rich has kind of brought it up into the modern world. So he's done a potentially cheesy technique, and it's got class. And Rich is kind of mostly known for his freehand, but actually what I love about Rich's painting is what he does with metallics. And I think he's one of the really progressive painters with non-metallic metal at the moment. So that's why I chose that one. Matt, you have anything to say on this shiny boy?
It's super shy, isn't it?
Shiny Bob. I think he's called Shiny Bob, Rich.
It's such a cool model. Like when they brought it out, and because I think the official paint job is all true metallics and stuff like that. And I knew someone was just going to go, mental with the non-metallics, and I didn't know about that SEM metallic stuff until you've just said it now. So that's really cool because obviously you can see it in the warmer tones in the bottom sort of shining up, which is really cool. Yeah, it's mental, but needs to finish more models.
So we've got that dig in there, but we've also praised him, so it's fine.
Nice
Rich,
balance.
got anything to say?
I love this model. It was, probably one of my favorite, if not favorite, releases from GW this year. I painted one myself. Yeah. It's an incredible model. I like what he's done with it as well. He's toned it down a little bit with removal of some of the lightning. Quality paint jobs is amazing. But like you said, and also to echo what you said a little bit about the freehand, Rich is known for his freehand. And, in the past, it's been sometimes the centerpiece to the model and rather than the actual model itself. And that's what I love about this is there isn't, without the freehand, you can concentrate on the model itself. And just the job that he's done on it is brilliant.
Nice.
Fair
play.
Mm.
Henry, you painted this one yourself, did an awesome tutorial for us.
Well, yeah, not for myself. I'll be honest, when it first dropped, I wasn't a fan. Just doesn't tickle my balls, this type of model. It's just not for me. But I did enjoy painting it, if I'm honest, for the YouTube. And yeah, it has grown on me. And like Richard said, I do like what Rich Gray has done, trimming a few bits and bobs, cleaning it up a little. But it's interesting what you were saying about the Sky Earth thing. Yeah. Like I really associate that with things like Gundam and BattleTech and stuff like that. Like you said, sort of deliberately 80s looking things and like hard sci-fi looking things. And I think 40K is very much not hard sci-fi. It's space fantasy. So it has been really cool to bring that into the look of 40K. And as you said, it's not jarring.
Exactly.
Like it's such an unusual character anyway within the setting that I think you can have that odd look to him. I'm a big fan of Rich's stuff anyway, particularly when he paints the more organic models, more organic shapes rather than sort of vehicles and things like that. So it's a nice choice. It's a nice choice. Like you say, if he'd finished a bunch of models, then he'd be another one where we were saying we could only pick one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what Rich finishes in 2021. But let's move to the next one, Matthew, if that's okay. Now this is a very important piece for me. So Arnau is one of those guys who he's not part of the old guard. He's kind of a relatively newer painter, but he's always having a huge impact with the stuff he does every year. And the reason I chose this piece was there's something that there's a discussion I enjoy having actually, which is miniature painting an art form? And I'm really passionate about that topic because miniature painting is important to me and it's my release and way of doing something I feel is artistic. And I feel that this is a miniature I would use as an argument for that case of is miniature painting an art form, because if this isn't art, then I don't really know what is. The color is amazing. The volume interpretation is amazing. I mean, no one can deny this. And it's, even though it's nude, it's tasteful, and it's almost like that anatomy study. So it's just that's awesome, isn't it? The light, color. There's so many things to say about this one. But the main reason I chose this as for me is that argument or that debate you could perhaps have. Maybe we'll have that as a show one time. Is miniature painting an art form? Henry, got any thoughts on this one?
Tons of thoughts on that topic. I think something we've spoken about a lot, and something hopefully you'll see plenty of that discussion coming from us over the next few years. I love it. Like I'm fairly scathing when it's look, another 75mm naked barbarian woman and stuff like that. So I think, as you said, having nudity, but not only sculpted tastefully, but then painted, as you said, as this almost an anatomy study.
Study of light.
It's just so cool. Like, it's so cool.
Actually,
You just imagine these oil paintings of it on the wall. Right? It's just that Arnau's done it on a. I don't actually know the scale of this, but he's done it on a miniature, and it is this type of model that's going to push our community, industry, whatever you want to call it, forwards. Because this is the one that, as you said, is going to legitimize this idea of. I think in the past it's you either painted sci-fi models, you painted fantasy models, and if you wanted to paint something realistic, it had to be historical warfare, right? 99% of the time, wasn't it? It was historical warfare or associated with warfare. And now all of a sudden we've got this piece. It's just about what it's about. There's no more to it, is it? You can just dive into that as a sculptor. You can dive into it as a painter, and you can talk about it for hours, really, if you want to. So yeah, I think it's a pretty important piece. And again, I think it's cool that someone like Arnau's done it, because again, like Dave, I think he's that. Admittedly, he's maybe got a year or two on Dave, but they're the sort of shooting stars at the moment. I think coming through.
Yeah, I think I'm really glad you agree with that. I think it is an important piece. So that's really cool to hear. Rich, you got anything to say on this lovely lady?
I think it's amazing, and just to kind of echo a little bit what Henry said, it's the amount of discussion that one piece can bring up. I think I remember looking at the comments section for this on Instagram.
Yeah.
Just the level of conversation.
Enjoyable.
Yeah, the level of conversation and but the depth of conversation that it brings up about our medium as an art form is really interesting. Like the fact that we've just gone from like the Void Dragon to this, two things that are in essence similar things, but how much of a difference how different they are. I think it's great. And I remember the first time seeing it, I've looked at lots of miniatures, and it's quite rare for me to be not shocked, but gasp, but wow, that's amazing. That is a rarity these days, just because of how many miniatures I look at. But this did, and I looked at it a lot before I sort of kept scrolling. Yeah, looked at it a lot. Great model.
Matt, got anything to say?
I think it's amazing. Like you could take that piece, put it next to like a Mundi or something, and it wouldn't look out of place. Like it is art. Like there's no two ways about it. Like it's a piece of art. It's you can't really argue that fact that it's not. It would fit into a museum or an art gallery without any issue. It's Arnie's just amazing. I remember seeing some of his stuff at Iron Skull, and I'm just like, it's just ridiculous. It's just.
Furian's just said in the chat that it's he loves the environmental lighting on it as well. That's what he finds very, very interesting. Not just what we're talking about with the anatomy and the painting of the skin, but the actual what he's done with that environmental lighting.
Especially that view we have now. We actually have just a dash of orange on show on the thigh.
I can change it to there, and then there's some more.
Wonderfully subtle and so tasteful. Nothing but praise for that one. So well done, Arnau. That's really, really important piece for us, I think. So should we do the next one? So a piece. I think every piece that Albert does gets a lot of conversation. Albert's one of those guys I'm very jealous of, because I have a very, very low attention span. Not as low as Richard here's, but still very low. And
it's not that bad.
And I think he's one of those guys that will paint every part of a miniature to his 100% best, and he'll finish it whenever it's done. So he'll just put every minute it needs, rather than getting bored and rushing any element. I'm really looking forward to Albert competing in Golden Demon in the future, because he moved from Japan to the UK, which means he can enter. So who knows what he'll do for that. But this piece was probably the coolest thing he did this year. He had a huge impact with his dwarf last year, and he sculpted a lot of the dwarf himself, but this one he actually got commissioned. So it's a 3D sculpt based on a Paul Bonner art, and he's based the color palette from the artwork, and every brushstroke's kind of perfect. It's very inspiring for me personally, because it makes me want to, not with every piece because I like painting fast, but it makes me want to do a piece where I slow down and try to do it with this level of attention. Yeah, everything Alberts does is just ridiculous. So,
how big is it?
I believe it's a 75 scale, obviously squat down. So I imagine it's similar to a big child orc sort of thing. But Matt, I think this was your favourite of the year, so I'd love to go to you.
It's amazing.
First.
Like, he posted the first pictures of it, and I probably sat there for about an hour just looking at it. It's like it's obviously based on the Paul Bonner art piece, and you can put them side by side, and they're just so, like, they complement each other really well, and he's done it such justice, and like the painting is just amazing on it. He's absolutely smashed it. Like, I can't wait to see it go into some competitions, Monty, all that stuff. Just see what happens. I can't wait. It's so cool.
Rich, you like this one, I think.
I love it. I love anything kind of goblin or orc based anyway. And I love Paul Bonner's artwork. It's intimidatingly good. Like, it really is. Like, that, the smoothness, the quality over the entire piece. There's no angle that you look at where you can see like a little like drop in the quality. It's incredible. I love it. I love everything about it. I love the fact also that when it was shown, you could see, well, you saw it, and then you got, like, later on you saw the steps when it was being built and the different bits that he did to it, down to like the little eggs on the side where he's made it out of milliput and then hollowed it out so to that sort of thinness. There. It's bonkers. It is absolutely bonkers, and I love it. I think it's perfect. I think it's probably my favourite of the year as well. Actually, I'll jump on that train.
Oh well,
you haven't even been asked yet.
Yeah.
Still 5 to go.
I was going to ask you all at the end, but I'll just be asking Henry then.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
But Henry, would you make of this? Lovely...
Yeah, like Rich saying, the intimidation thing. I remember when I got back into the hobby about 10, just maybe 10, 15 years ago, whatever it is now, 10, 12 years ago. And I went on to Cool Mini or Not, which at the time was sort of quite a good repository of artwork. And seeing the top pieces on there was that disconnect. That was like, I can understand how you put paint on a model, but I don't understand how they've done that. Like, how is it not just that colour or whatever already? And Rich saying as well, there's not really a drop in quality, is there, across the whole thing? Like, as you scan your eyes around it, there's so much depth to every part. Like, nothing's just coloured in. Nothing's a secondary part on that model. Everything's very, very deliberate, isn't it? And I think Paul Bonner's such a huge, like, you've got people like Paul Bonner, Brian Froud, those guys have such an impact on what goblins particularly look like, or what we think is sort of in Western artwork goblins look like. And I think it's just one of those nice, it was great artwork or artist and artwork, great sculpt, and then a very good painter for that sculpt. For that it was a very nice meeting of artists, I guess. What I'm trying to get to, it just sort of makes sense that he did it. Like quite a long time ago, was it Marc who did the Paul Bonner Minature?
That's right.
Yeah, a similar sort of, it just made a lot of sense, like for them to do it. But it's not my favourite.
I'm not sure if it was this piece, but when I was talking to Albert, I remember him saying he made a massive mistake on one of his biggest pieces, and he was scraping it off with like cotton buds and isopropyl alcohol. So it could have been this one.
We'll find that out hopefully in the comments. One thing I wanted to talk about at some point, and you guys have brought it up, is I've seen similar videos in the past. I noticed in the comments that people say that they find it maybe uninspiring or demotivating. So I just wanted to say, don't find any of these pieces demotivating. If you're watching this, these guys are the best, and it's cool to have people that are the best and always pushing. And I think I know every single guy on this list, and they're all lovely people, and they're normally quite accessible these days. But as a rule, in general, don't get intimidated or annoyed by what you see on the internet. It's a blessing and a curse being able to see so many miniatures all the time. But try to take inspiration from this rather than getting demotivated. So hopefully it makes you want to pick up your brushes. And so long as you're getting better at your miniatures, don't worry about what other people are doing. Just try and enjoy it. But you guys raised that point, so it's a good point to slot that in. But Matt, let's move on, I reckon. Aha! This is a fun one for me and you, Matthew, because we had ogling time in the hand. So one of the few competitions that happened this year was the first Iron Skull, which is a new UK competition. And when that's back, I encourage everyone to have a go at that one because it's in London. Very nice competition. And this won the best of show, quite rightly so. And it's by David Soper, which I think many of you will know his name. And this piece is kind of similar to Albert's in that every area is so meticulously perfect. And he's the other person that makes me jealous. They have that really, really long attention span. They can spend a year on a piece or 2 years on a piece. I just can't do that.
Was it this one he said he actually did pretty quick for him?
Yeah.
Didn't he add? I'm trying to remember. Didn't he add the goblin quite?
He went from
late
kind of
on in the
almost
project.
sort of painted. Sort of, they had like starting painting to done for Iron Skull in about 2 months.
Right.
I think that's what he said.
Wow.
Because I know he'd done a couple of classes on the
That's right.
the
Yeah.
Trogos, hadn't he? In that style.
He started it before, I think. Anyway, it's definitely a piece you have to see in hand. I remember a few comments, sort of people saying, "Oh, this shouldn't have won the competition," but if you haven't seen it in hand, you don't understand it. It's like David's finish is bonkers good. Like you hold it in the hand, and it's just immaculate. Just the finish of the paint is nice to look at because it's so perfect. There's no bits that are too glossy or too matte. It's just all super smooth. So I've got nothing more to say, really. It's just spot on. So I'd like to go to Rich, as you love your goblins. This is your army. You're going to finish it.
Yeah.
So,
I'd say this one looks more like Rich than
that picture just there.
The
I think I love about David's work is like a lot of times you see things on the internet and you're like, how have you done that? And then you see him, I feel like, oh, okay, that's how you've done that. And the pictures can make it look a little bit better sometimes on the internet than it does in real life in some cases. Whereas with David's stuff, when you see it in real life, it's like, oh my God, it looks even better in real life than it did when I saw a photo of it. Like you said, the finish, the quality of every aspect of it is testament to how long he spends on it. They're always, all of his stuff from the years of going to Golden Demon when he was, entering as frequently as kind of we were, the quality of the finish is always impeccable. I really like seeing his stuff in real because it is one of those general surprises that it is loads better in real life. Even though it looks amazing in photos, when you look at it in real life, it's like, how exactly have you done that? Like his quality over, especially the smaller places, like around the face of the goblin, that finish is insane, absolutely insane. Sometimes I don't get how he gets paint to do that.
Yeah,
like how does he get paint to be that smooth or to do what he does with it? So yeah, I think it's a brilliant piece.
Henry, what do you reckon of this one?
Yeah, I love it. All over it. Nah, it's great. David's great. You guys have said it. It's about finish. I did a class with David a few years ago now, and Andy, you'd gone on about this thing about finish, and at the time I didn't really understand it. I had real trouble understanding what you meant by finish on the model. And I went to this class with David, and he brought a load of his models as well. And many of them I hadn't seen before. A lot of them were non-GW ones as well. And it's just, it's what you said about that's when it sort of made a bit more sense of this idea of trying to achieve this finish. And I don't think I can articulate it perfectly what it is, but his stuff's really relaxing to look at. Like when you pick it up and look at it, it's just very chill. Like nice, it's all just nice. Right. And I don't mean nice as a wishy-washy term. Like I got a similar sensation when we held like heavy metal stuff in the hand. Again, it's just there's something very clean, very just nice about it. And I think it's cool as well when someone like you see someone's work he's not just very successful, like he's actually got a thing. Like Dave Soper's got a. You see a piece David's painted and you know he's painted it, right? Yeah. Whereas there are certain pieces where you would go, oh, that's probably so and so, but it could be one of 3 or 4 people because they've all decided almost to do that school of art. I don't feel like anyone's really done that with David's stuff. Like I feel it's quite unique.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's, I see a lot. Sometimes people say maybe this should have won over Dave's stuff. And that can be because in the photo, it looks like it has more contrast because it's got bright highlights and things like that. But it's really hard to describe, like you said, what it actually is.
They don't look like painted models.
No,
they're like it's really so hard. They don't look like someone's put acrylic paint over a plastic thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There seems to be this huge amount of depth to them, but it can't be there because we know that the plastic is incredibly shallow, and it's not, and it's completely solid. There isn't anything internal coming through, and it's just cool. It's just very, and for someone to have been at the forefront of stuff for a couple of decades now, well, more than a couple. It's pretty exciting, and if you go to shows in the UK, there's a really good chance. And let's be fair, Golden Demon is the show that an awful lot of people will go to compared to the other painting shows, right?
Yeah,
you'll usually get to see something by David, which is really cool.
I love also like how he's got his. Sorry, he's got his style that he sticks to. Like this is how he paints things. And he's just pushing that further and further and further and sort of seeing how far he can go with the way that he does stuff, which I think is great.
Definitely. But now, if you're at home and you've never seen David's work in the hand and you think that's not that good, then you need to get to the shows because him and the heavy metal guys too, they're those guys. You see it in the hand and you'll change.
I mean, I took these photos and these photos cannot do that piece justice. Like, there's no photo that could do it justice. You can get so far with a photo, but until you actually hold it and you get all that minute detail that only your eyes can really pick up, you can't say, like in a competition when you're only seeing the photos, this should have won over that. It just, it was amazing to see in person. I was so nervous holding it. I was literally shaking. I was just like, don't break this, don't break this.
Yeah, I didn't pick it up. I was just turning it on.
I had to carry it from the cabinet to the desk, photo table. I was like, oh, for God's sake.
Let's move to the next one, I reckon. Mr. Comets. So, Ben's, I think, part of the old guard, really used to win every demon and all do loads of cool stuff. And in that time, maybe early 2000s, I think there was pieces similar to this, but maybe a bit more creative, without sounding negative, just less straight out the box, a bit more unusual in the Games Workshop universe, but pushing some of the things within it. So, for example, they don't make rattling anything really anymore. And this is a rattling tank. I believe it's a 4-drug tank with a blood bowl halflings on there. There's a squirrel on the gun. There's a guy playing guitar. And this, I think, was going to be a Golden Demon Chicago entry. So definitely was going to be a big contender. So it's a big shame that competition wasn't on, because we could have seen what result this had got. But luckily, Ben's shown it to us. So yeah, just fun. And it did really, really remind me of the old school style Golden Demons. I don't know if you guys feel similar, but nice to see pushing creativity from Citadel stuff, and kind of reminds me how cool you can make Citadel things be, just because of the scope of the world and the fluff. Henry, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm a big Ben fan. Like, I just like, he was one of the first people I really sought out more of his stuff when I became aware of him, when I first got back in the hobby, which would have been mid 2000s or so, little end of the the noughties. I also think Ben's a really good argument for that miniature art being a thing, because it's very, very different to that Arnau piece, right? Very, very different, but it's unmistakably a Ben Comets piece. He doesn't really give a fuck about whether it conforms to this grim dark thing that is pushed a lot.
And there's a cat there.
It's fine. It works. It's his interpretation of this vast setting that we have to create things in, if you want to, with 40k. And it's just, I don't know. It's that whole, does it bring you joy stuff, right? This reminds me of like that when I was young and I'd see like a Matt Parks Slayer sword model type thing, and you'd pore over that white dwarf and you'd look at all the different angled shots. Always love it when a model's got, I think it's why I like dioramas probably more than I like single miniatures, and it's because I love it when someone gets it right on the 360. You keep turning it and there's little stories with it. That's what gives me the most joy when I look at miniatures. And I think Ben's one of and Matt, obviously Ben's sort of long-term hobby.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
They're very, I think they're a great example, aren't they, of two people that have pushed themselves, and we've been the beneficiaries of that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd have loved to have seen this. I just think it's a lot of fun, isn't it? It's a lot of fun.
I believe I won't spread any rumours, but I think Matt did something for this competition too and chose not to show it. So hopefully you can see those two battle it out. But definitely, the hidden details in every angle is what makes dioramas cool. And like you said, a real opposite to something like Arnau's, and both artistic. Rich, what do you make of it?
I think it's great. I love, like, if you look at the way it's painted in a very distinctive style. It's all about the piece and like the story that it's being told, rather than necessarily the pinpoint accuracy of the actual paint application. It's
a nice point.
I love how you look at it and it just makes you smile. It's just so fun, and there's so much life to it as well. And I love it within miniatures. We can talk about a lot more of like the serious side of like the art conversation, like we just spoke about with the previous stuff. But then sometimes you do see stuff and it's just a really fun piece that brings you joy, and that does this for me. Like, it's such a different idea. I love the character of the guys on the tank. Like, the tank commander's got a sword in one hand and a link of sausages in the other. Like, that's just awesome. It's so cool. And like the Elvis look-alike. It's just, I love it. I think it's great. It's such a cool piece.
Yeah, it's I think the only point of miniatures is to look cool, and this, you just look at it and it's fun, right? Is there anything you love on this one, Matt?
Sort of the whole sort of rattlings and the grot tanks are some of my like favorite pieces in like the 40k universe. I mean, like this one's got a can of Coke, it's got a kettle on the go, it's got his sausages, you got Elvis Presley on the back, like. You got the tank commander who looks like Brad Pitt from Fury. It's just great. Like, there's so much. Yeah, that's really, I know. Like he's, aiming the thing. It's just so much character, and it just like really represents those. Yeah,
and it's tiny. Like that's worth bearing that in mind as well. Like that's
they are
miniature,
tiny
really
things,
small.
those Blood Bowl halflings. But I'm gutted. Like Adepticon didn't happen, so we couldn't go see this at GD. It'd have been amazing to see. But,
I bet that's amazing in hand, right? Like you turn it and look and enjoy it. Like enjoy holding a piece. I think that's what miniatures are for, right?
Yeah. How much?
I
was just going to say, like, how much fun would that have been to paint?
Yeah.
Like sitting there smiling away at yourself as you're painting a dwarf
I think he
Elvis
has
Presley.
On his Patreon actually documented most of this, so it's definitely worth checking out. He does seem to enjoy it quite a lot. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
It's also one of the nicest people I've met in the sort of painting community. So
yeah.
So, and I think actually it's reflected probably when you look at the piece.
Yeah. Painting for fun, genuinely great guy, and really nice to have that contrast, like Rich pointed out. Serious pieces, fun pieces, talking about the most accurate painters, and then try and get a bit of diversity in this top 10. I think it's cool, and that variety is what makes this fun, and that's why competitions are so subjective. Because what do you go with? Do you go with the fun factor, or do you go with the pristine factor? Or the art?
That's a really good point, though, right? And I think that's another topic we'll probably make more of a show on. But it's something like that at a Monty or an SMC or whatever, it'll do well, right? But at a Golden Demon, that thing's competing for the top spot, right? Because I think Golden Demon isn't just about technical painting.
Theme over everything,
is it? It's getting it. And I think Ben gets it in spite of his take being slightly left field. It's they
have their own characters each show, I think, and you can then and these paint jobs suit different things, which is really cool. But definitely something for another show there within that. Some good chat. So let's do the next one. Here we go. So Marc Masclans, always a pleasure to look at his painting. I always like Marc's colours. That's why I like Marc's painting. And I feel he always has the right balance of smoothness and brush strokes. So you can see the brush strokes, but it's still refined. It's the balance of painterly and arty, but still smooth, that you're like, he's not being lazy. This is a terrible kid stuff model, sold out very, very quickly. And it's based on an artist, actually. So Marc's been inspired by the original art. Can't remember off the top of my head. I do have the art book, so sorry about that. But it's based on a piece of art. So he's used the palette. The palette's kind of slightly different to like Albert and David, where everything's super meticulous and perfect. But this, to me, has feel like a lot of life, and that comes from the brushstrokes. Rich, got any thing you like about this one?
I think it's great. I love the story to it. Like, if you look at the atmosphere that he's created, like you said, using a specific palette and the way that he's gone about painting it, I think it's brilliant. It looks really like almost like old school, like art that you would see from a few years ago in certain like fantasy genres. I think it's brilliant. The color choice is great. I love the way that Marc, like you said, uses brush strokes, but also the smoothness as well. And yeah, having seen the way that he paints on like the course that I've been on with him, I love the way that he does it as well. The way that he builds up to it from quite rough to just refining. Yeah, it's a great piece. I think it's awesome.
Henry, would you make of this?
Yes, my favourite thing Marc's done for a long time. My opinion, like it's my favourite thing that Marc has done for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very cool. It looks like an oil painting.
Yes.
As Rich said, it's got atmosphere. Spoiler: this is my favourite one of all of it. It's just I think I like as well how, and I'm sure it is deliberate, but I really like how different parts of the model are painted to different levels of almost completion.
Refined or less refined, depending on it.
And I don't mind that. Like even that shot there, which is sort of the back of the model in a way, it doesn't look like the back of a box art model, if you know what I mean. I just really like it. I'm quite hard to please when it comes to not massively fantastical stuff. Like I like fantasy stuff, and so like I often find sort of real world or historical type things, I don't find them particularly interesting. And yeah, I get it, it's a mermaid, I know that, but that's it's not, but like that's not crazy fantasy, right? And when you look at this piece, it's not, you're not going, oh, look at this fantasy miniature, or at least I'm not anyway. I just look at it and just think it's super cool. Your eye or my eye is certainly drawn straight away to him. You know, it's just cool. Just looks like a rad oil painting in a smoky, dingy bar that I might have drunk at in the past.
I love like the way that you react to it. So like if you look at some of like the Albert stuff or David stuff, you look at it to think, how has he painted it that smooth, or how it, like you want to see everything about it from a miniatures point of view. Whereas when I look at this, I want to know the story behind it. I want to know like why they're in this situation and more about that, rather than necessarily how exactly it's been painted. I think it just evokes slightly different things. Well, for me personally, to like really like the top level smoothest painters ever. This I think is just, it ticks a different box.
Yeah, there's people will be aware of the mantra "fuck smoothness" from Alfonso, which a lot of people think of that he doesn't like smoothness, and actually that's not what the phrase means. The phrase is actually that smooth is awesome, like Albert and Sopa, and then stuff that's perhaps, it sounds bad to say, I don't know, less perfect, because to me this is perfect, but to see the brush strokes basically, and I think that it makes it look better because it just, you get a feel, and what's important here is the color and the light, and it just hits you in the right places for me, and I absolutely love it. Always love Marc's painting. If I didn't have the rule of the same artist once, then I'd probably have a few Marcs in here, probably. So yeah, absolutely brill. Have you got anything you want to add, Matt?
I mean, you've kind of covered everything. It's an incredible piece, and I think the thing that always surprised me with Marc is the speed at which he can paint these things. Like he's sort of no slouch on them. He really gets through them quite quickly, and to that level is just insane to me. It's, but I understand what you mean on the whole sort of smoothness thing, because it's like you can see the brush strokes, but they don't detract from it at all. Like they add to it, which is really quite cool. Well, for
it's
me,
an interesting debate, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's something that I'm battling personally with myself, is trying not to refine things and actually preferring it. I've recently smoothed something out and it looked better before, with more brush strokes and more feel to it, and it's quite difficult to get your head in when you've done something like Golden Demon where you have to try and do it perfect. But it's definitely nice. Keep going back to diversity and mixing it up, and I just really encourage that with miniature painting, to be open to all styles and all different things, different types of miniatures. I just think that's really important, not to get stuck in a particular way. So should we move to the next one? Are we on the last one, Matt? I've lost count.
No, we're not. We've got a few more to go.
I've got two or three. Well, how many left have we got?
We've got, I think, 2 after this, so 3 total.
Right, so 3. Yeah, so one of the things I tried not to do, just, I'm not biased, but it could look biased, is choose loads and loads of Dare models or Cult of Paint models. Dave Colwell did 3 insane Cult of Paint arts this year and could have chosen any of those. So I encourage you to look at those and buy them. But Ruben's one of my favorite painters, and he's actually goes really nicely off. We were just talking about the fuck smoothness, the painterly thing, visible brush strokes, and Ruben's another one of those where I love his work, and you can see the brush strokes, and it always adds to it rather than detracts. If we go back to the first photo, Matt, because the reason I chose this one is for another particular reason, and that's Ruben does painted on shadows or projected shadows. So if you look at the wolf, you can see his ear is casting a shadow. The sword and the body is casting a shadow on the wolf. Her left knife has a shadow across the thigh. And this is kind of Ruben's thing. A lot of other painters do it. Actually, David did it on the base of his troll. But this is one thing that Ruben does a lot. And I feel he's pushed in the miniature world, like people do it now. But I think Ruben perhaps brought it to the forefront. And Ruben, I think Ruben's entered Golden Demon twice and got 2 Slayer swords. So he's no slouch. And people might know him best actually for his large-scale Ulrich that won Call Me or Not. Everything Ruben does has been bonkers. So I was super excited when we got him to agree to paint this model. This being probably my favorite miniature from the Cult of Paint range. And to see it with these painted on shadows was just an amazing moment for me. And I'm interested to see what Henry feels as this is his miniature too.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously amazing, fantastic, all that, which people will be probably bored of us saying by now. That's why we've picked them. They're a top 10. I really like, again, I think it is if you're going to start looking at painters and then the top tier across it, then you need to start identifying people that are the best at that style, the best at what they do. Or you have to look at people that are pushing things regardless. They always have to be the finest painter, but perhaps they get something, perhaps they evoke something and they can push it and they can keep doing it. But Ruben's stuff is just that looks like a drawing, a painting. You know, it's back to this whole his miniature painting artwork and whatnot. That is out of an awesome, colourful storybook about some badass and her wolf chum that run around hunting things and killing things. And he's probably watched like 20 films based on these 2 characters. You know, they're just
so that's
so it's just great, and it's lovely to see them alongside such different styles. You know, but Ruben's one of those ones, isn't he? Like you say, there's a few people that have a reputation for a reason. And I think actually what's very nice is I think one of our models has highlighted how good he is at what he does. And I would like to think he was really pleased with this because I just think it really suits the way he paints. And yeah, love it.
Rich, I don't think I've ever chatted to you about this one, so I'm interested to see what you reckon.
I love it. I think the use of light is exceptionally good. I love the colour, like the tones of it as well, how the lady and the wolf are kind of matching up with the colour of her clothing to the wolf's fur. Just how dynamic it is as the model.
It's just so colourful as well, isn't it? Like there's like every colour's on there.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Like you said, the way that he paints his shadow, gives it so much depth and so much life to it that it looks like a still from a film or a really good animation rather than a miniature itself. Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Matt, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I remember when we got the images through initially before we put them out, and it was just amazing to see the from sort of the resin to that. I was just like, how the hell has he done this? He's no slouch in painting. He's amazing. Like the shadows, I didn't initially know that the shadows were painted on until you told me that they were painted on. I thought it was just a light casting.
I think actually my favourite shadow is the ear one from the wolf, because it's not as stark as, say, the body or the thigh. But then my eyes wandered over it, and I saw the perfect shape of the ear just drop below, and I was like, okay.
But you know, you were saying about seeing brushstrokes is a legitimate thing, right? It's a tool. It's a style. But you can see a lot of the brushstrokes on this model. But what gets me to a point is, like, we know roughly how long this took him to paint as well, and I don't quite understand how there's that many.
Haven't seen any of Kirill's work before, you just have to. He must have been the first person to paint a tree reflected in the back of a helmet, and then another soldier painted. I don't think anyone else had done that before. But this bust I chose in particular because I found it the most inspirational. It kind of just ticked. All right, sorry.
The sounds disappeared for some reason.
No sound?
Yeah, I'm just going to push it to a holding screen.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes ago.
I think we should be back.
Sorry about that. If you lost our sound, and hopefully you've got us back now. Maybe you caught some of what we were saying, maybe you missed it. But we'll start from the top. So Kirill, if you haven't seen any of his work, you absolutely have to. I was kind of saying he must have been the first painter to paint another soldier in the back of a helmet reflected from the non-metallic metal. But this piece stood out to me from all his stuff he's done this year. It picked a lot of personal boxes and things that I want to learn to do. And there's kind of three main elements to this, which I absolutely loved. The skin is really, really natural, even though it's got extreme lighting. And he's used a lot of brown in the shadow. If you kind of look at each tone, it's really just brown. There's none of the kind of pinky normal skin tones you might see, but this is really natural, even though he's pushed the light to the extreme. And I love the OSL on one side, and it's subtle. For OSL, you could go nuts with the orange, but it just creates that atmosphere. And I think the thing which is most interesting is the non-metallic metal on the sword. And the reason I think it's so interesting is maybe if you had this model in your hand and you had one to paint yourself and you had the colors that he did, if you're a good painter, you might be able to have a quite decent go at copying it. But if you'd never seen this version before, would you interpret the sword like this? Pretty much guarantee you wouldn't. I think there's a couple things that really got me on this. On the left of the sword, at the bottom of the wrist by the fur, there's the tiniest variation in colour reflected from that fur. And then actually, I didn't notice it at first, but the reflection of the bottom of the hand at the top of the sword is insane. And that's where you could be like, oh, well, it's, some skin colour and you do the same shape as the hand, but who's doing it that perfect? And then the level of contrast where you go from the kind of brownish grey into that big block of white. I mean, it kind of seems simple when you look at it, but it's so right and so perfect. And I really love to know what you guys thinking of it, starting with Matt, I think.
I mean, he's doing that non-metallic just to the next level. No one else is doing what he's doing. I don't think many people would think to just put a pure block of white just down the entire sword and make it work. Not just with like the non-metallics, like the skin also is just, it's incredible. I don't know how he does it. And like you see his other pieces and you got the reflections of like stuff that isn't there in the reflection of the metals, and he's just insane. No one's doing this. But yeah, it's amazing.
Rich, what do you make of this lovely chap? He looks a bit like you again.
He looks how I wish I looked. So in my head, that's what I look like, but maybe not in real life. I love it. I love how it looks like a proper study of a real sword, of the way that light really hits something. With this, but then with also they'll do the stuff that Kirill does, like his suits of armor. You can see it's almost like he's gone to the museum to look at them, study them, and that's how he's painted it.
Like still life type thing. Yeah.
It's one of those painters that when you see a piece of his, you know it's him, which I think is always a really cool thing to be able to do. Is you've got your style. The thing I like about this one though is it's when you see it on his massive suits of armor, or it's like a bust that's got loads of armor on it. That's like the whole part of that piece.
Definitely.
Whereas this, I like how this is just an aspect of it, but it doesn't take away from the rest of it, but it's still amazing just as it is. The whole piece is brilliant. The mood of it is great. It's just like you said, Andy. You can see how he's done it. As in, you could probably copy the colors. You can see where he's put them. But I'd love to watch his process of doing that. Of, like you said, just grabbing a great big chunk of white and slapping it up onto that blade and just being like, "Yep, that's where that goes." Like the practice, the amount of time that it must have taken him to get that right. And also, he's a quick painter as well. Like, he doesn't take forever to do it. He's great. Love it.
I really like that point you made, Rich, because about how the NMM isn't the model, and I think that's why I chose it over anything else. Why I love it so much is the NMM is so stunning, but it's just one blade, and it doesn't dominate the piece like some of them where they've got a silver helmet, a silver chest armor. That's a good point, which I subconsciously probably had why I liked it so much, but that you made there. And it's just, it's not got one dominating part of it. Like I said, the light on the skin, the OSL, the NMM, it's kind of got all your tricks, and they're all great. So what do you think of this one, Henry? Because I don't think I've ever chatted to you about this.
Yeah, so I only saw it fairly recently, last couple of days, and it was this or Marc's for me was my sort of, and for basically the same reasons, because again it looks like a oil painting, and the reflections on the. I know you're saying, "Oh, don't be demotivated, don't be intimidated," and all the rest of it. Like, it's frighteningly good. Is Kirill's NMM, and it's nothing to do with technique, right? It's all to do with being able to see it, right? You can teach someone how to put the paint on, but it's absolutely no good if you can't see where it has to go. And he just gets it, doesn't he? I'm a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, big nerd, he's not aware of the hobby, doesn't really do it. I remember, would have been a year or two ago now, when the picture came out with the trees in the back of the helmet. On that one he did, and I just got a message from my mate just going like, "What the fuck is this? Like, have you seen this? Are you aware of this in your industry?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." Like, that's very good, isn't it? Like, look further. And he's like, "Oh my god, there's soldiers in there." I was like, "Yes," and it's like, yeah. So I think it's very, very, very good. And again, it's one of those ones. If someone goes, "Oh, is miniature painting artwork?" That's one you shove straight out.
That's right.
You take a good photo. That obviously is a good photo. Take a photo in a certain way. You'd have people struggling to know if that was 2D artwork or a sculpt. I think.
Great point with this piece. Yeah.
He's someone at the very top of his game. Like, there's like a higher echelon of painters in like miniature painting, and he's up there with like a very select few amount of people.
Definitely. I think I said briefly, but I think you could possibly consider him the best. Maybe he's not your favorite. He's not my personal favorite, but I love his work, and it's super inspirational.
What's the scale of this one, mate? Dan's asked in the chat. Do you know what?
I think this is you've kind of standard bust size. I think
12-ish.
1/12 or 1/10. It's not like crazy big or anything. But yeah, it's like your normal kind of bust size. He has actually come out with a book very recently. It's 70 euros, which some people might think, oh, it's quite pricey, but it is enormous.
It's like a phone. Yeah.
I really recommend it. If you look at this and go, that's cool. I don't want to try it, but I want to read how he's done it. That's kind of how I feel about it. I love painting non-metallic metal. I don't think I'm going to pursue this style yet, although that kind of sword would look cool on our tree man bust. So maybe that could happen. But the book's incredible. So if you're on the fence because of the cost, just do it. It's really thorough, and he talks really about how he goes about creating this NMM, like, what he looks at and what he thinks about, and that's super cool. So yeah, if you're a fan of his, you got to get it. It's the price of one big model. Get a book with all this info in instead. So yeah, I think that's my favorite because of what I'm painting. I want to paint a lot of skin at the moment. I want to paint a lot of busts, and the lighting on the head is exactly how I'd love to do our very own Cotter paint bust, actually. So I'm building up the courage to have a go, but definitely inspired by this. So I'll be studying that. Have we got any more, Matt?
That was the last one.
That's it.
So we're at the end.
Perfect. Well, I really enjoyed that, and even though I sort of picked the top 10 out, I really enjoyed discussing it with you three, and hopefully you liked what I picked, and hopefully people watching thought they were cool models too. Yeah, it's just an opinion. What I thought was thought was cool. I'm sure many of you guys had favourites that weren't in there. Love to see some other favourites in the comments section, maybe something we haven't seen. So yeah, love to get input from some other people. Really, really cool topic actually, and really, really positive, I think, to talk about for our first podcast. And I'm really looking forward to doing more subjects like this, and maybe some more top 10 sculpting. It's something I'd love to do.
Seeing everything in green.
Yeah.
Top 10 armies. Top 10 armies would be a good one.
So
top 10 Space Marine chapters, you mean, Rich?
Yeah.
Or just top 10 Blood Angels models.
There's only one Blood Angels.
Yeah.
There's only one.
Well, there only needs to be one first place, so you know.
The rest in that. So Henry, would you like to?
Yes, mate. Yeah, so thanks for very much taking us through all that, mate. I did really enjoy it, and I think it worked very well. I hope you guys that are listening enjoyed it as well in the chat. The idea for these shows, I don't actually know what to call them because they're not really a podcast, vidcast, YouTube show. I don't know, whatever they are, but you can see that you're going to get a lot more out of watching them than you are listening to them. But our aim with them is to effectively have 3 parts to a show. We'll open the show where we'll discuss some cool things that we've seen. Then we'll have a main topic, which we'll talk about. And then we're really keen for the third part of the show to be a lot about the community, but in particular, the Cult of Paint community, by which we mean our patrons, people that have followed a YouTube tutorial and tagged us on Instagram, people that have come on a class. It's getting to be in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people now. And we want to spotlight those things. We want to talk about them. We want to discuss them. So the way the show works is it goes out on a private live stream. And if you're in our Patreon, then you can watch the show live. You can interact with us as the show's going on. And then at this stage of the show, we would normally be doing Q&As. We'll have slides up of work people have done. And we're asking people to use the hashtag #PaintCultist if they would like us to feature and talk about some of that work. And we're not necessarily meaning stick stuff up for us to critique and all the rest of that. That's not the goal of it. It's just to discuss, and it's to talk about what's going on in the community. We have a very privileged view of it, less so because we're not allowed to travel at the moment. And so we're reaching out to you guys a lot, to share with us what you're up to. Yes, we all competition paint. Some of us are more focused on that than others. But at the end of the day, we really love painting miniatures. That's what we talk about 95% of the time when we're talking to each other. Andy said, maybe we haven't seen some that have been really good this year. We've seen them. We've seen all of them multiple times, right? because it's literally just every screen has got Instagram or Pinterest or this or that not on it. But we genuinely mean it when we want to hear from you with regards to what you want to talk about. So with this being the sort of pilot episode, there's not going to be as much to this final segment as it is anyway. I will have a quick look and see what's been going on in the chat, other than when everyone freaked out when the sound dropped out. But someone's saying they'd love to see a top 10 Space Marine Primaris Lieutenant, which I think
Perfect.
is and Bob managed to get 30 transfers on a Titan while watching this. So good work, Bob.
Good work.
I assume a 32 mil scale one. Maybe not. Maybe means Titanicus. Anyway, that would be a fun topic to talk about, actually painting physically big models, not just large scale, but how you actually approach painting really, really large stuff. So I don't think I really want to sort of spend too much time on the Q&A idea here. But as I said, that's what we want to be the closing part of the show. What we endeavour to do as well is more like this show has been, is once in a while we'll do almost like a special. And that might be where we have a guest artist on that we want to talk about, or it might be when we've been to a show and we'll do a special just about the show and that type of thing. So as I say, guys, the aim is to be every 2 weeks we'll get a show out to you here on YouTube. If you'd like to be able to watch along live and interact with us, then consider jumping on the Patreon, having a look on there. If you want to keep up with what we're up to across our various social medias and all the projects that we, fingers crossed, have coming up this year, you can check out the various socials as well. And there's still a week to run, I think, on the late pledges on the Day of Guard Kickstarter, which I will pop in the description as well, which was our fantasy miniatures Kickstarter that we did last year. So thanks very much, chaps. I thought this was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Guys that have been listening, feedback to us. We will chuck this one out as the pilot. There's already a few more things that we want to tweak before it's sort of officially episode 1, as it were. But no, I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching us. So thanks, Andy. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Rich. Loads and loads of fun. And we will go off and now write a huge, great list on subjects that we want to do and argue inevitably about what the best miniatures are and how that was completely the wrong top 10 and how why didn't have this one in and all the rest of it. But incidentally, so what was everyone's top? So I went for Marc's. Andy, you went for Kirill's.
These two are trolls.
He's got to go with
trolls.
Gotta be a troll.
Right. Well, thanks very much, guys, and thanks for watching, and we will see you all in a couple of weeks.